Hey everyone, welcome back to the BizBlend podcast. As you all know, this is the space where business strategy, human behavior, and real talk about leadership all sit at the same table and share the same messy lunch. As always, I'm your host, Sana, and you know what? Richard Rohr says that we do not think ourselves into new ways of living, we live ourselves into new ways of thinking. Today, for this episode, we are pressing on a nerve that a lot of people feel but rarely name out loud: bias in leadership, how it shows up, how it shapes our bosses, and frankly, how it shapes us when we become the boss. Most of us have that one manager story lodged into our nervous system: the micromanager, the dismissive supervisor, the my way or the highway type who somehow got promoted again and again. And listeners, my guest realized something very powerful. It was not just them. Rooms full of people had stories. That curiosity pulled him into nearly 30 years of work studying what great managers actually do. My guest has taught communication seminars across the country, worked deeply in organizational development, and spent decades researching the characteristics of truly great managers. His latest book, Perfect Bossture, The Framework of Elite Managers, gives leaders a practical model to simplify their role and also elevate both team performance and organizational productivity. So, listeners, today we're not just talking about good bosses. We are talking about bias aware leadership, the quiet assumptions, the unconscious favoritism, the I am fair to everyone story leaders tell themselves while the teams are quietly burning out or checking out. So, if you have ever thought, like, is it me or is my boss a problem? Or if you are the boss and you have wondered, am I accidentally become the manager or the kind of manager I used to complain about? You are in the right room, my friend. And listeners, meet my incredible guest, Aaron, Dr. Drew. So, Aaron or Dr. Drew, welcome to this blend, and it's really an honor to have you here with us.
And thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Superb, superb. So, you spent years teaching communication seminars where people always, lit up when you hit the difficult team member section. Um, so then there's this inevitable question, like, what if the difficult person is my boss? So when you think back on those rooms, with all stories, what convinced you that the real issue was not just bad personalities, but something deeper in how managers see and treat people?
Right. Um,
Mm.
it's a great question to start with. It did strike me as odd. Originally, I thought maybe I was the only one. I really did not realize the frequency with which people were experiencing bosses that could be better. I'll put it in a diplomatic way there. And so it I think one of the problems is that people come into management through different paths, and maybe the selection process isn't always what it should be. I think there are some who are very good politically at just working the organization, connecting with the right people. And saying what needs to be said to make them sound like the right candidate for our boss type job. Um, And so they're really good at that piece, but maybe not so good at actually being a supervisor, overseeing people. And I also saw a group of people who, well, frankly, they were just the friends of the people who were doing the hiring. And again, that doesn't equate to good management. Um,
Yeah.
one other source I saw was people who are really good as what we call individual contributors. Those who were really good at the technical aspects of the job they were doing and maybe being just a mentor for other people on the team. And so it would seem logical that they would do well in a position over other people. Um,
Mm.
but but again, maybe not so much. Being good at the job and being good at the job of overseeing others who are doing the job are two different things. And so I think this might be the source of many of the issues. That's my opinion.
Mm. I agree with you on so many levels here, Dr. Drew. And let me just get into that language because some of the situations that you described, they have happened. I've gone through them from a perspective of being a team member where I know to some extent it is right. I mean, it is a legit demand or let's say criteria or an ask that until and unless you are the super talented, high performing individual contributor, there is no sense of being, uh, you cannot be a good manager. Um, at that time, I think I kind of 100% agreed. But now I think, and when I look back, I think there cannot be just one aspect or one criteria of becoming a good manager here. There is more to that. And I do agree with you, Dr. Groh, that, I think that's the immediate criteria. When you are performing, you are a great individual contributor, you are kind of in that zone of consideration of, becoming a people manager. But then it's people manager, you know
Right.
it's a whole different terrain. It's a whole different terrain. I think it definitely requires a very different mindset, state of mind to begin with. um and secondly, you know I also do agree with the other aspects there, that there can be so many different ways to kind of get into the maybe good books of the higher leadership, maybe political aspects, or people would popularly call it as nepotism. That
Yes. That is another way. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that absolutely makes sense.
Well, if we can go into that just a little bit, you mentioned having technical skills, especially in some jobs like engineering or medical fields, is going to be key to be a successful person in charge. No doubt about that. But let's talk about a few other areas that I think matter a lot. And so the first area, what we just discussed, I would call competence. Just being good at the work that's happening that the team is doing. But another area is communication. If people don't have really good communication skills, or they're not saying what needs to be said, or they're uh, just not not addressing issues that need to be addressed, not perhaps not praising, not giving compliments. I know we're all getting paid for the work, but I
Mm.
think it makes a difference when people hear some appreciation about good work that's being done. So communication is another area. And the third, in my opinion, in the framework that I'm working through, which I call the 3C management framework, is that
Mhm.
of care. You know, people typically do better um, when they know that the ones who oversee the work care for them. That gives them some care for the work as well. And these three areas, competence, communication, and care, I think the managers who can demonstrate all three of these are really seen as the best managers out there.
Confidence, communication, and care. Super, super. I have so many thoughts. So, to begin with, Dr. Grow, which one of these three C's are kind of, misunderstood in the biggest way? Like,
Yeah,
uh,
great question. I I think that the understandings there, what I might respond with, and forgive me if it's not a direct answer, is what I don't see done enough. And maybe this is a misunderstanding of the area, which is care. I think there's just a lot of managers out there who have the attitude, well, people are getting paid, that should be sufficient. And certainly on one level it is. I mean, if we weren't getting paid, we wouldn't be at the job. That's most people, I don't care how much they say they love the job, wouldn't be there if they weren't getting paid to be there. Um, and so just some common courtesy, it can go a long way. I think also that seeking opportunities to help team members develop their own professional skills is another way that care can be shown, but isn't leveraged very often. And I know that some organizations are strapped for finances or resources to provide that type of benefit, but there's a lot that can be done that doesn't cost a lot either. So supporting team members and just building them up and seeking ways to get input from every source possible, maybe creating teams that have a lot of different perspectives on them, from
Mhm.
backgrounds, from where they come from, the education they have. That I think is another way to show care for the work that's being done on the team.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this is something that is not only um applicable in the workplaces or in the professional world, but also, outside as well. I mean, let's just, let's assume that you are in a public place and you litter in there, and then you say, but the people, the person who's going to clean it, it's their job. So I haven't done anything bad. I don't care about it. It's their job. They're getting paid for that, so they have to do it.
Right, right.
So
Another area that might be worth discussing in the care component, at least as far as I'm seeing it, is bias related issues. I think
mm,
um, many times managers aren't aware of their own biases, and what we're not aware of will affect us, and what we are aware of, we are able to affect. And I think it might be worth getting into bias awareness and the types of biases we will see sometimes among managers. And for those who are aspiring to be managers, this might be something to really pay attention to.
absolutely, absolutely. We will get on to that. Another kind of question that comes to my mind, before we explore the bias aware leadership, what exactly it is, and all about it. One thing that, comes to my mind is, let's say a manager will say, okay, let me work on, I know that I'm aware that, all these, it needs a bit of an inner work, and then maybe I haven't been trained on this, so I'll definitely take that ownership. But then, um, it's not one sided. It's not one sided. For example, if a team member is also not on that same alignment that, I'm trying to uh, kind of guide them, mentor them, but maybe the scope of improvement is not as expected, then how can such situations be navigated, especially by a manager? Because sometimes there can be situations, where as a person, not as a manager also, I'm like, frustrated. Oh my goodness, I'm trying to help, my team member be better, work on their skills or work on this. I know they have the potential, but I think there's some kind of a stumbling block in there. In such situations, how do you suggest that, how a manager can navigate through it?
That is what I found to be one of the most common concerns of managers, particularly those who are more new to a management role. Uh, but it's funny how I think sometimes we forget one of the most basic steps. One of the first steps really needs to be an understanding of what the expectations are for an individual. And sometimes that's as straightforward as that sounds, it's not always done. And so a team member will think they're doing fine in the job uh, when maybe they're missing some really important parts of the work. And it's surprising to me how many times managers are, for want of a better term, almost afraid to approach the issue. You know,
Oh,
being straight with an employee, a team member about here's what I'm seeing, but here's what we need, and making that clear. That I think that's step one, and that can be done even before an issue arises. Just starting that off from day one would be a really important part, or at least when we see the issue, let's just have that conversation first. Um, that and again, it just surprises me how many times the manager will stay silent until it's time for a review. And then when at a review time, that's when they'll bring it up. And that always leaves the team member going, "Really? You couldn't have told me that like earlier when I had time to make a change before this review?" Anyway, so that would be step one. Awareness of what are the expectations, and then the conversation. And after conversation, we give it some time and let's see what happens then, right? And
Yes.
and if things go as they need to go, great. No worries. We're right where we need to be. If the issue comes up again, and we could talk about performance, we could talk about maybe things that are detrimental to the team, like gossiping or or information hoarding, things that don't help a team progress. Um, then we're going to address it, but not just with a conversation. Perhaps at that point, there needs to be some written documentation about we had this conversation. Uh, I thought it was understood, but we're seeing it again. So we need to make it more clear that this is really important. And so some documentation may need to happen to demonstrate that importance, right? That level of this is not just something we want, it's something we have to see. And and uh, and that combined with some training, combined with some special help if that's needed, perhaps partnering with another team member to help them along if it's that type of an issue, that can help as well. Um, in the end, though, and here's another problem I see with some managers: if they see it after an original conversation, if they see that issue crop up again, they'll go back to another conversation. And so I think that indicates to a team member that, maybe it wasn't that important after all because we're just gonna talk about it again. And so I think managers need to be not afraid to take that next step. Whatever the organization policy is, follow the organization's policies. That's always the way it has to be. And that typically means putting something in writing that a team member will then sign and keep a copy of so that there's real clarity around what the expectations are. And, it is unfortunate to have to say sometimes there's a third occurrence and then it doesn't improve or the change is not made. And the manager has to help a person maybe find a different place to be if that happens. And again, I will stress the importance of following organizational policies in this process. I would also suggest that a manager talk first to their own manager about the situation and perhaps a human resource representative to make sure that this goes exactly how it needs to go. I think when managers, again, particularly new managers, kind of take their own strategies or do what they think might be best without the counsel of their own boss or an HR representative, that can be dangerous. And I would definitely not want that to happen to anyone who's listening to this podcast.
Yeah, makes sense. So now, Dr. Robe, let's get to the bias-aware leadership. Um, what exactly it is? Um, I know we are short on time, but if you can just give a glimpse of what exactly it is and how do you identify, are there any patterns or any characteristics that define this bias-aware leadership?
Sure. Well, I think it's important for managers to recognize, and this is not just managers, it's everybody. Everybody will have biases. They will see things through the lens of their own experiences, through the lens of their own preferences. And these preferences, these past experiences, whatever they might be, are going to create uh, a specific way of seeing things, perhaps a specific preference for how things should be or the way things are or why things happen. And these are all biases. Being aware that those exist, and anybody who says they have no biases is not aware of their own biases. Because let's put it at the most basic level. They're going to have a favorite food. They're going to have movies that they prefer or types of books they like to read. These are biases. All right. Perhaps harmless with respect to management, but they are biases. Well, this is also regularly shown true with respect to the type of people we might like to be around, we might like to hang with, and which is fine for social circles. But in management, oftentimes the team we oversee is the team that was there. We don't get to choose who they are. And so the important piece that we have to follow is that we give every team member equal footing with respect to their perspectives, their what they see might be important, that we value their input, and sometimes we can get tripped on the up on that. Um, and I can certainly go into a few specific biases if you'd like, where that
Mm.
where that can cause some problems.
Yeah, please go ahead, Dr. Drew.
Okay. Well, there's a bias type called confirmation bias, and this will be a case where a manager has an opinion about the way things are, the way things should be, and all they're going to look for, whether they recognize it or not, is information or perspectives that confirm what their own thoughts were on the matter. Perhaps which direction to take or which product to develop next. And they'll look for data, they'll look for ideas that just confirm that to be the case rather than being open to perhaps considering other ideas. Another type of bias that we will often see is similarity bias, kind of related to confirmation bias, but the difference is that it's it if it agrees with somebody else's opinion and I want that opinion to be the case, then that's the idea I'm gonna go with. That the information that is similar to the information we have, well, that must be accurate. And again, just not being open to considering that perhaps different information brings value to looking into. So similarity bias is another type of bias that managers should be aware of. One most valuable bias that I think managers should be aware of is attribution bias. Sometimes they will attribute an occurrence as happening for a given reason, and maybe isn't the case. And I'll just take unfortunately, I think sales teams have this, happen more often than others. If a sale doesn't happen, a manager of a sales team might say, "Well, that salesperson maybe just isn't as friendly as they need to be." So they'll attribute the lack of the sale in a specific instance to a personal characteristic of a salesperson when, they don't know all the details. The fact might be that the customer just it wasn't the right time and nobody would have been able to make that sale. Or if it's not a personality issue, maybe it's just, oh, they didn't have enough data. And so they'll attribute the the failure of a sale to the salesperson not having enough information to give the customer. Well, maybe, but it could also be the case that it just wasn't the right product for them at that time. And so that's something managers should also be aware of. They'll attribute uh, whatever to something that really wasn't the reason. And being open to exploring many possible reasons and finding whatever may really be the case and working on that would be a recommendation I give to many managers.
I think the third one makes so much sense, Dr. Drew, because I mean, I have so many lived experiences, examples with regards to this. I mean,
You
um,
should share one. Yeah, I think it's your show.
and especially in sales, there are times when, uh, you know, it's a new product. You have to do cold calls. You have to reach out to potential customers who may be using a similar kind of product or a service competitor. And there can be times when you may get let's say, I got like, 5 rejections in 2 days, after a cold call and then demo. um so it kind of, obviously, I mean, I had to do my um self analysis, do self analysis in terms of what is working or what is not working. Let me study it. But then at the same time, some of the feedback that I received during the demo, I mean, they were straightforward, as clear as day, that the product that you are showing to me is not, it's inferior to what I'm using. And I just had got completely frozen at that time, which ideally shouldn't be the case.
Right.
I mean, we need to have that confidence. But then deep down internally, I also knew that yes, there are so many improvements to be done. And I think we would be kind of doing a disservice if we are not taking feedbacks from these demos or from these cold calls. uh, because sometimes, especially for founders or early stage entrepreneurs and startup, people, it can be really difficult to, or maybe sometimes, disheartening to see that, they're trying to create something valuable, but then maybe the customers are not reacting or responding in a way that, they would have expected. So that kind of creates like this block of receiving some really good constructive feedbacks in ways to improve your products. So I think, and in that particular scenario, it was like a complete, take that personally I may not be the right one, or in the right position to, get the desired outcome or achieve the desired number. So I think that's something that I can recall, when you explained the attribution bias.
Well, yeah, and I think when people consider as people consider why something may have happened, they really need to look beyond the surface level. So many variables managers are not aware of. And the more they explore that, the more they might find um, attribution of why something happened or why something didn't happen might be more accurate if they take a deeper look.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so before we wrap up, so one kind of question, to, before we conclude this conversation, Dr. Bro, like, uh apart from the confirmation, the similarity, and the attribution, are there any specific bias driven behaviors that you see over and over, in especially managers who are, just um, who are actually smart, they know what they're doing, they're aware, but um, they kind of assume that they are being very fair. It's all well and good. Like, apart from these.
Um, the question is, are there additional biases that maybe we could talk about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I think there are some people who have biases towards maybe age. I mean, they're going to pay more attention to team members who have more experience in the workplace. And while I personally understand that, I think
Mhm.
younger team members can also have valuable perspectives, particularly if we're talking about providing products or services to a younger group. Why would you not listening to a younger member of your team? I also know I am positive there are managers who have some gender bias. They'll take the perspective of one gender over another, um,
Mhm.
and that can also be harmful. If we're looking to provide services to the broadest group of people out there, then it will always be best to hear the broadest array of perspectives. So, whether that's gender, whether that's age, whether that's a race, perhaps educational background, all these things and many more can be brought into the equation about where do we, perhaps in the back of our minds, maybe not even aware of it, but maybe we want to become aware of it, where do I give more priority to the opinions? Whose opinions am I listening to more? And if there is some patterns there, perhaps it's time to pay attention to that and do something about it so that we don't let those things affect the decisions we make maybe as much as they were in the past.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a very crucial one that you touched upon. And another one, I think maybe it's kind of a similar to the confirmation and the similarity. But then, sometimes, like if I put myself in the place of a manager, just this automatically, I would think, okay, there is some new project or something that, very crucial that we have to achieve. And sometimes we tend to overburden the top or the high performers in our team, that, let them take all the projects, let them take all the activities up there. Let's not look at even the middle order, or let's say the lower ones. Maybe they would have some kind of different perspective to this, kind of, like, this confirmation bias. Not sure if I'm attributing to the correct one, but I think that's a very, very common one that we, tend to see, that okay, um uh, person A is the top performing one. Okay, let me take him or her, or take that particular person and add another one kind of a project onto him. And I think, um to a huge extent, that pressure also puts a huge dent on that individual contributor's performance.
Yes, it does. I mean, and that's not uncommon. The people who are, uh, it's so common. We see the most experienced person, the most proficient person on the team, often getting even more responsibilities. And and while some might like, bring it on, I'll take whatever. After a while, that person's going to get burnt out. They will, and they're just going to look around, and go, "Why am I doing like 4 projects, 5 projects, and this person over here has got one?" They're just, it's tough, and I can see why. That's another type of bias that a manager will want to just naturally give to a high performer. They'll want to give more stuff too. Well, that doesn't really help the newer team member develop, not nearly as well. Perhaps teaming them up and letting the more senior member be a mentor for the younger one with primary responsibility given to the younger team member would be a better way to go. Will not burn out the senior team member. Yeah, they might not enjoy being asked to be a mentor, but they'll probably like that better than being given the project on top of every other assignment they already have.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we're short on time, Dr. Gru, but I'm just taking a stock for all the situations that, I've seen or I've been. There's this another kind of, like this thought process, especially for, let's say, even um uh, a senior, person, being a completely, new to a team. And um there's this not expectation, assumption that if I want to be in the good books of my manager or my supervisor, I need to kind of personally connect with them. That can be, participating in the smoke breaks, or kind of, having that kind of, like, um, put a mask and pretending to like whatever their manager, as you said, yeah, similarity bias, yeah. Do you think that, that is something it's actually needed necessarily, or there can be different ways?
Well, I think there can be different ways. The problem is many managers think that their way is the way it needs to be. And when we have managers who think that way, it's a little challenging. Sometimes they'll be what we call micromanaging, right?
Mhm.
They'll oversee, they'll give the responsibility of a task to a team member, but then if that task isn't done the way they themselves would do it,
Mm.
there's a problem, and that's unfortunate. I think it would help if more managers were open to allowing team members to take the assignment, whatever that assignment is, and let them do it their way. I mean, again, I get there's gotta be some oversight. You can't go totally off the rails, but if the work is getting done, even if it's not being done the way they themselves would do it, that should be okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Then that is another form of bias, personal biases towards how something gets done or what the final product looks like, or the process towards getting there. Usually everyone's in agreement on what the final product should be, but how to get there is often a cause for question and debate and bossiness, if you will.
And that reminds me, Dr. Groh, your book is called Perfect Posture, the framework of elite managers. Now, this elite word, this can actually trigger people. So when you say elite manager, how do you define that in a way that is actually compatible with bias awareness and humility, not the power, control, or status?
Right. Well, in the category of bias awareness, I know the best managers are aware of biases. They are aware of their own biases. They are aware that other people will have biases, and they control for that as much as they can in the teams. And so with respect to that one part of elite management, it's just the awareness of it and making decisions based on that awareness and not letting the biases that they themselves have impact the work as much as it otherwise might. The goal is to give people, the goal I feel for managers should be they should want to be seen as the best boss somebody has ever had. And in this one area, which is I consider part of the care element, if they have care for the team members and they're aware of team member perspectives and they factor that into the decisions that are made, um, this can really help a team member consider that person to be a really good boss. Again, there are three elements. Care is one of them, communication and competence being the other two. But I have found that managers who are really good in all three of these areas are seen as excellent managers, best boss level, right? And this book is read for those who want to be seen as the best boss in any organization.
Super, super. So now, Dr. Grover, before we wrap up, so for anyone, like especially those who may be new to the being manager, or may already be in that messy middle, and they genuinely want to, uh, you know, start to make some changes here. How they can start? Like, what's the first step that they can take? Let's say this weekend itself.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the very first step, and this isn't often talked about, but when they're new in the role, I think it's most important that they align their own. Um, it's important that they realize what their own boss sees as most important. Sometimes a new manager will take off in a direction that they think is important, but their own boss, the one who gives them their evaluations quarterly or bi-yearly or whatever the case may be,
Mm-hmm.
they don't take that person's opinion into account. And that could be dangerous. And so the advice I would give is to make sure that their own priorities are aligned with their own boss's priorities and move forward in that direction. What are the things that have to be tended to? What what needs to happen next? And then communicate that out to the team members. So that would be the recommendation I give for any new manager is make sure that the attention they're giving to certain items is what their own boss thinks has to be the right stuff to attend to. That's where I would recommend they start. But also, as they manage, and this would be a close second, is realize that the team members they have are valuable. They are. people with, they've got thoughts, they've got opinions, they've got backgrounds, and the more they can leverage their team members in the work rather than trying to do it all themselves or just limiting what each individual does to what they themselves are comfortable with, can also help. So maybe that's a couple things. You asked where to start, and I went a little farther than that. But I think the close second is working to maximize the power of each team member to create even more, benefit for the organization.
Yeah, I totally makes sense to me personally, Dr. Pro, because um, it's it's kind of getting that, taking stock of everything, like this awareness phase to begin with. Because until and unless we do not acknowledge that, yes, there is some gap in there. And good thing that you also mentioned about, to begin with, let's first connect with, you know, my own boss to understand what exactly are the expectation. I think that helps in bringing so much of clarity. And then, of course, that gets in you into the confidence mode. And then with communication and care, I think we can be a step closer to what we wish to achieve. It cannot be like a huge overhaul, maybe in a week or in a month. But I think, at least we can, go ahead and start with those consistent efforts to begin with.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you for just kinda confirming my own biases in that area. It's just I challenge anybody. I challenge anyone out there to find when we talk about good bossing, good being a boss, being a manager, when we talk about these things, the skills that apply to this, I have yet to identify a skill, an attribute, a characteristic that doesn't fall into one of these 3 areas. And, uh, so that's why I like the framework. I think it makes sense. I think for anybody who's looking to provide a framework, anybody who's seeking a framework for their own management practice, I think this framework, can help a lot.
Super, super. And Dr. Gross, if listeners, they would like to get a hold of your book and also explore more about the perfect posture, the 3 C's framework, the elite framework, what would be the easiest way to connect with you and also get hold of, what you are sharing?
Well, thank you for asking that. It is available online in different places, but where I like to send people is to my own website, apgrow.com/store. And there they'll find a couple of options. They can buy the book as an ebook or an audible book, audio recording in the book that I narrated. And also, I'm able to provide a couple bonuses to that purchase. And we're all right now, it's just practically giving it away. All right. Because I really want the word to get out. But people who buy it from the website will also get a infographic of the key points that are brought into the book all on one page. And they'll also get an audio recording of a previous book I wrote titled Change or Go: How to Stop Non-Team Player Behavior in the Workplace. And so that's where I like to send people to pick that up. And of course, they can get a hold of me through the website as well. And I'll be happy to work with those who uh, want the additional attention in this regard.
Wonderful. Listeners, go and check out, try it out. No confirmation bias from my end, but then I'll have all the details in the show notes for all of you listeners so that you can easily connect with Dr. Crow and check out his book as well and check out his resources, his ebook or maybe the audiobook versions as well of Perfect Posture and even for Change or Go. And if I can, I think we have covered a lot here because this conversation it tied together a lot. The reality that almost everyone has lived through a bad boss, the reminder that some people truly uh, should not be leading, and then also the hope that a lot of people, a lot of what we call bad management it is actually solvable. It is fixable with awareness, structure, and courage. So, Dr. Growth, thank you so much. This was such, I think, kind of, a master class in understanding this, kind of a messy dynamic here when it comes to being bossed or being a boss. So, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure, and I wish you all the best this day as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Groh. And thank you to all the listeners. Um, and for tuning into this episode of BizBlend, and especially to all the employees listening. If you are dealing with a biased or a careless manager, your experience is valid. You're not crazy, you're not alone. Document what you see, find allies, set boundaries, and when you can, move toward environments where leadership is not just a title, but it's a practice. And you have
Well
thank
said. Well said.
Thank you so much. And once again, listeners, thank you so much. Subscribe, follow us for more such valuable conversations. And also, if today's episode hit a nerve or gave you language for something you have been feeling at work, share it with a colleague or a manager or that friend who always texts you that you will not believe what my boss did stories. And until then, this is your host, Sana, and keep listening to this blend. Thank you.